This is your boy. Now, what's this going to be about? It's going to be a little different than some of the recent stuff I've been putting out, but at the same time, it's going to be related to a little bit of my earlier content when I was really covering like what Bigfoot could be and different things like that. But this is not going to cover Bigfoot. It's going to cover cavemen, more specifically Neanderthals. Now, people think that these guys were boneheaded, dumbass knuckle draggers. That is very boneheaded and a dumbass theory, to say the least. These guys were not stupid. Matter of fact, I want to say around 100,000 years or more. Now, of course, this is according to quote-unquote normal history, okay? So take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt on that. I do believe kind of a little different on that. But in the end, I'm just a man who's in front of a camera and a microphone, so there you go. So like I said, moving past that disclaimer, like I said, supposedly these guys were around for a very long time. As a matter of fact, I think even now, maybe longer than we've been around. So you got to think about that. That means these guys were not stupid. They were able to actually adapt to their environments pretty quickly and fairly efficiently, if you know what I'm talking about. Now, what are the physical differences? Well, people think that Neanderthal was a pea-brained idiot. Like I said, that's foolish. Neanderthal actually had a brain as every bit as big as ours. And they were very intelligent. They were capable of cognitive thinking, problem solving, and different things like that. However, their brains were designed differently than ours. When it comes to certain types of reasoning and stuff, it's believed they may not have had quite that niche filled in on certain things. And there's a reason for that. Because the frontal part of their lobe was designed for olfactory senses as well as sight and different things like that. Quite literally to sense the surrounding environment and to adapt to it. Because you have to understand something. Neanderthal, the average male was around 5'6" So these weren't tall people, but they were massive. I want to say they had at least twice the musculature of your average. Back then it was Cro-Magnon, which ain't much different than us. The slight of variance, but let's leave it with this. You put a Cro-Magnon in a business suit and drop him on Wall Street, and let's say he grew up in our society. Chances are you wouldn't recognize the difference, and chances are he would have functioned just fine. My point is, they practically were us. So I'm gonna leave it at that. However, physically, Neanderthals were massive beings. Like I said, they were shorter than us, but their musculature was much higher, as well as the fact their bones, I want to say, were at least a third, if not more, in density compared to ours. So my point is, you basically put the strongest human athlete, let's say a strong man, and you put him against a Neanderthal, there's a good chance the Neanderthal would win when it comes to lifting heavy things. And also, people think many times that these guys, because they were muscular and stocky, that they were slower than us. That's a bunch of baloney too. They didn't quite have our endurance when it came to long distance moving. Let me tell you something, they could take care of the business. And also, another thing is, why were they so stocky and muscular like they were? You have to understand something. Two things. Again, like I said, their environment and their diet. Their environment consisted of the cold, usually. Freezing cold temperatures. You have to understand, these guys were moving around during the Ice Age. So you're talking about having to adapt and also function in that kind of freezing climate. The more muscular an animal is, or more like the more dense an animal is, the more body heat it's going to give off. And of course, in winter climates, that keeps said animal or individual warm, at least compared to us. Us as Homo sapien, we're designed to actually lose heat. That's just how it is. Also, if you take a look at a Neanderthal's rib cage, this will be interesting. Our rib cage is kind of like this. Neanderthals are closer to this. Why is that? You got to think about this. Most primates have ribs like that. And that's basically to handle the extended and enhanced musculature on their body. That's something else to take into account. So basically, you're talking about a very physically strong specimen of a creature or person. Like I said, these were people, not creatures, of an individual, whether it be male or female. And of course, you're also talking about something that is, like I said, these guys were built to last in their environment. Now I'm going to go ahead and talk about their diet. Well, here's something interesting about Neanderthal. These guys, of course, they ate a whole hell of a lot more meat than we do, even back then. And there was a reason for that, of course. It's what they had. These guys are hunter-gatherers. And, of course, in the Ice Age, you don't have a lot of crops to really grow. You have animals to eat and to hunt. These guys hunted mammoth, woolly rhino. What I'm saying is these guys also went up and close personal with either spears or flint knives or whatever they get their mitts on. These guys are far from dumb. I'll tell you that right now. They were able to definitely adapt and to take down. It wasn't just large prey they dealt with, large prey. It was us. That's what I'm trying to tell you. People think that supposed missing links came from one species or another. It's not the case. There were variants of human beings that were developing in different types and different adaptations throughout this great planet of ours. People don't understand that. And Neanderthal was simply one variant. And of course, Cro-Magnon was a slightly more, I think that's where, like I said, I have my own theories on that, but I'm not going to put that out here because it would just be too confusing and also take too long, talking about. Because like I said, I believe when it comes to us, I definitely believe there was, well, you guys already know, I believe there was definitely some divine intervention, literally, into us becoming as we are. Let's leave it at that. Now, am I saying that I believe cavemen were fallen entities? Not especially, no. I do believe that they're more the natural order of things, but I could be wrong. Just leaving that disclaimer there as well. Okay, so Neanderthals, of course, had to deal with us. And you got to think about this. Physically close up, hand to hand? No. You're not going to win. You'll be torn to pieces against one of these guys. Even their women were much stronger than us. That's something you really have to think about. Another thing is very fascinating about these people, who we definitely existed alongside of and probably fought on many occasions, is that they actually aged and matured quicker than us. Your average male, this is a young adult male, for example, he would have reached maturity, I want to say around 15 years old. Where, of course, when it comes to us human beings, of course, legally, we're considered adults around 20, between 18 for functioning and 21 for, of course, being able to do certain other not illicit, but more grown-up activities. Leave it at that, like, drinking, et cetera, smoking. But here's the thing. The human body actually does not reach final maturity until we're 25. That's something to take into account, which is definitely, it took me by surprise when I looked that up. Now, of course, there's different variants on that, but what is known is that Neanderthals, they matured quicker than us. Now, their lifespan was kind of course, slightly shorter, because I think a lot of that had to do with their lifestyle. I mean, let's leave it with this. So the idea of a Neanderthal elder existing beyond past a certain age without being killed was rare, or diseases, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just leave it at that. So regardless, these individuals who lived back then, they definitely had a rough way to go. And also the fact is of something else. Of course, people may not know this. They buried their dead. They had societies just like we do. Again, there's cave paintings and different drawings that were believed to have been done by Neanderthals. It shows their intelligence. And they definitely had a belief system. They buried their dead, like I said. And they also were cannibals, which is something else, which actually makes kind of some sense. They didn't exactly have a, how can I say this? They definitely didn't seem to have the bleeding heart mentality that we guys have today, which of course is understandable. You know, we're under a different society, we're under different rules. You have to have empathy and compassion. You know, that's what the Lord set for us anyway. But back then, it was a little different. You have to understand, you know, he didn't send down his son until much later, if you get my drift. So I'm just going to say that right now. these individuals literally lived by the law of the jungle, or the glacier in this case. They many times would abandon their, it's proven in the fossil records to a degree, if I remember correctly. They were definitely, they would abandon their weak, either that or they'd kill them and eat them, most likely. Which, of course, makes sense. You're contributing to the crime. It may have been voluntary. Just leave it at that. But here's something else to really think about. I'm going to go and throw some more interesting ideas. I'm going to leave a name of the individuals that put these extreme ideas out there because it's still fascinating. There are, how can I say this to say the least? There are beliefs that Neanderthal may have actually been basically a very hyper carnivore. Well, there's no other carnivorous. There may have been a very hyper carnivorous predator of us. Think about that, man. That right there is crazy. And the thing is, you really have to take that into consideration. You're talking about big, muscular monstrosities that had no qualms hunting us down, eating us. And the thing is, it's known that we definitely us as Homo sapien, or would be closer to Cro-Magnon back then, we almost went extinct. And while the Neanderthals were definitely more than us, it's definitely known in certain areas we almost did anyway. So you have to take that into consideration. I definitely believe I think a lot of that's exaggerated and definitely entertaining, but exaggerated regardless. But at the same time, you really have to take that into consideration. They may have actively hunted us. Of course, we probably definitely did them. But I'll tell you right now, what people don't know, what really killed Neanderthal off, yes, probably was us. We definitely had a hand in that. But also, I believe it had to do with us simply developing and them developing, whether it be God's will or not. Of course, everything's God's will. But my point is, there was interbreeding going on. And it's possible that they just simply got bred out. Whether it be through numbers. Of course, you have to understand that on this one thing. When it comes to societies or civilizations, many times when how can I say this makes sense? When a society or a civilization is conquered by another one, usually there's two things that either going to happen. Of course, when it came to us, like I'm talking about us Americans, when we came over and colonized this country of ours from over in Europe and all that good jazz, of course, the indigenous people were slaughtered. They were completely butchered, destroyed. And, of course, their numbers were decimated. And, of course, they were forced to a degree to live up to our way of life. That's one thing that can happen. Now, of course, some native indigenous people, some of the tribes don't exist anymore. They fought and they fought and they fought and they refused to bend the knee, so to speak, and they're extinct, which is awful in itself. But there's another thing which is actually more common than people think. The conquered usually are absorbed into the population of those who conquered them. And their former civilization is pretty much wiped out, which is kind of what happened with Rome to a degree. The Visigoths and all that, they kind of continued the old Roman traditions, but a lot of the ways of Rome was forgotten because the population was absorbed by their conquerors. Something to think about when it comes to the Dark Ages. Now, there's a reason I'm going into detail about this. Could Neanderthal and a lot of the other types of cavemen out there, could they have survived to present day? Definitely. I definitely believe that is a possibility and maybe even a probability. But you have to understand something. Neanderthal, them guys were shorter than us. They were stockier, definitely stronger, probably as smart. But there were other variants of primitive man that were big. I mean, we're talking about some of these guys were like 7+ foot, built like walls that could pop your head like a pimple. I believe it's definitely possible, at least in some cases, that maybe these primitive individuals, because of us doing what we do best, and that's kill, they retreated into the woods and probably adapted in their own way, because that's how things work, especially with when you have a population that is lower in number compared to, how can I say this the best way? When you have a lower population that is according to other populations, mutations happen. And of course, actually enhanced and increased evolvement or change also occurs. So I'm just going to leave it at this. I wouldn't be surprised if such beings or creatures, people, if they had to adapt in that respect. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these so-called feral people sightings, or even Bigfoot to a degree. I'm talking only a few situations when it comes to Bigfoot, because you guys already know I believe Bigfoot's something completely else, different. But it could account for a few sightings. I just wanted to put this out there. I know it's a little longer than my usual fare, but this is because of the information I put out. If you get my drift, there's just so much to really focus on when it comes to this. And I'll definitely be doing videos like this in the future. This one was more fun than usual to do. I just wanted to put that out there. You guys know what I do. I am producer for Dark Waters Entertainment. If you've had a sighting or encounter, you also know my email, westvic@iamdarkwaters.com. Reach out to me. That way, we can definitely do something. You guys be blessed and you be safe.